Welcome to Creepy Vibes. Tonight we're heading deep into Texas, where the houses are big, the nights are long, and what hides in the dark doesn't always stay hidden. These are 5 true Home Alone horror stories so disturbing, they'll make you rethink every sound you hear when you're by yourself. But before we begin, don't make the same mistake others do. They watch, but they don't subscribe. And those are the ones who don't make it to the end. So hit that subscribe button and tell me, are you watching this alone? Because once we start, you won't feel alone for long. Let's dive into the darkness. I used to believe the scariest things happened out there, in the woods, in creepy motels off the highway, in places where the wind moans through broken windows and the moon seems just a little too close. But I was wrong. Sometimes the scariest things are hiding just a few feet above your head, breathing the same air, waiting for the right moment to say hello. I was 14 when it happened. Still a kid, even if I didn't want to admit it. My voice cracked when I talked too fast. I hadn't kissed anyone yet, and I still slept with one foot out from under the covers to prove I wasn't afraid of the dark. That weekend, my parents were off to Austin for a work retreat, some fancy resort where they teach sales teams how to high-five and lie better. They kissed me goodbye and promised to be back Sunday night. "You're the man of the house now," my dad said, ruffling my hair. I thought that meant I could eat whatever I wanted and stay up as late as I pleased. I didn't know it meant I'd be fending off a monster no one would believe in. Saturday night, 2:13 a.m. The house was still, quiet in that hollow, unnatural way homes get when no one else is inside. I was on the couch wrapped in a blanket that still smelled like my mom's fabric softener, watching some crappy old horror movie, something with bad acting and a killer in a clown suit. I was halfway through my second pepperoni Hot Pocket when I heard it. A sound from the vent above the TV. Not just a creak or a pop, not the usual groans of an old house. Number this was scratching. Light at first, like a fingernail tracing along metal. Then it shifted, slow, uneven thumps, dragging. Something was crawling. I paused the movie, leaned forward. Thump, thump, scrap. I muted the TV. The sound stopped, just like that, as if whatever it was had heard me. I sat there, heart knocking against my ribs like it wanted out. But I was 14. I wasn't supposed to be afraid. So I muttered something stupid, "Must be a raccoon," and turned the volume back up. But I didn't finish the movie, and I left every light in the house on when I went upstairs to bed. 3:41 a.m. Something woke me. Not a noise, a feeling. You ever get that sense someone's in the room with you? Like the air is watching? I opened my eyes and stared at the ceiling. There was breathing. Heavy, wet, labored. Like a smoker trying to sneak a breath. It wasn't mine. Then something wet dripped onto my forehead. I sat up fast, wiped it with my hand. It was dark, sticky. I fumbled for my phone light, turned it on, and looked up. The vent over my bed was dripping. Something black, thick, not water, not blood. It smelled like a garbage disposal full of rotting meat and something worse, something sour and human. I grabbed my flashlight and pointed it at the vent. For just a moment, maybe half a second, I saw it. Fingers. Long, pale, filthy, with jagged yellow nails and skin that looked like old chicken fat left out in the sun. They curled, recoiled, and disappeared into the shadows with a dry, papery rasp. I screamed. Not the kind of scream you give when you stub your toe or lose a game. This was primal. From the gut. I ran out of the room and didn't stop until I was sitting on the kitchen floor, sobbing into the phone, calling my mom over and over. Sunday morning. The police came after my mom called them in a panic. They showed up in uniforms and flashlights, trying to act calm, like they didn't believe me but had to play along because it was protocol. They searched the house, every room, every closet. Then they checked the crawl space above the attic, a place I didn't even know existed, and that's where they found it. A flattened, crusty old sleeping bag, dozens of empty fast food wrappers, a mason jar full of what they assumed was urine, and the worst part, a shoebox. Inside, Polaroid photos, all of me, sleeping, in my room, some from angles that meant he'd been in there, in the room with me, while I slept. One photo was from that night. The cops asked if we had a ladder or anything outside he could have used. We didn't. They checked locks, windows, even the vents. The man, whoever he was, had been living in our walls, living in the space above my ceiling, watching me, crawling through the vents. They never caught him. The fingerprints didn't match any in the system. No one saw anything. He just disappeared. Like smoke. Like a bad dream you remember too vividly to be fake. Now, years later, I still don't sleep with the lights off. I tape over vents. I check the attic twice a month. I've moved 3 times since, but every night when the house goes still and the air feels just a little too cold, I find myself staring at the ceiling. And sometimes, God help me, I still hear it. That faint scratching. That dragging. The pale man reminding me he was real. And maybe still is. They say heartbreak is loud. That when someone leaves you, it echoes, bounces off the walls of your life like footsteps you'll never hear again. For me, it wasn't loud at all. It was quiet. And that was worse. I was 22. My boyfriend had just moved out. Well, ex now, though the word felt sticky in my mouth. We'd been together 3 years. Lived together for 2. Fought more than we laughed, toward the end. The kind of toxic where you cry after every "I love you" and flinch when the silence lasts too long. So when he left, I should have felt relief, freedom, empowerment, or whatever. But all I felt was space. Big yawning silence in a house that had been filled with noise for so long. His laugh, the microwave beeping at 2 a.m., even the way he slammed the bathroom cabinet too hard. It was gone. All of it. Now it was just me and the creaks of old wood, and a loneliness so dense I could practically hear it breathing. The knocking started on a Tuesday. I remember because I'd just eaten half a frozen pizza and passed out on the couch watching reruns of Law and Order. I woke up to the sound of 3 gentle knocks on the front door. Knock, 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 like someone trying not to wake a baby. I sat up, checked the time. 11:17 p.m. I padded to the door, squinting through the peephole. Nothing. Porch light was on. Street was quiet. Not a soul in sight. Weird. But hey, I live in Houston. People knock on the wrong door sometimes. Kids prank. Amazon drivers forget to ring. I went back to the couch. Forgot about it. But Wednesday night, at 11:17, the knocking came again. 3 taps. Same rhythm. Knock, knock, knock. This time I opened the door a little quicker. Still nothing. I even stepped outside. Looked left and right. There was a dampness in the air, the kind that clings to your skin like you're being watched. But no footsteps, no rustling bushes. Just the smell of wet cement and something else, faintly sour. I went inside, locked the door, pulled the chain across, didn't sleep. By Thursday night, I was waiting for it. Phone in hand, camera app open, lights off, like I was hunting ghosts. 11:15. My heart was in my ears. 11:16. My palms were sweating. 11:17. Knock, knock, knock. I bolted off the couch and yanked the door open mid-knock. There was no one there, but taped to the door, neat, centered, deliberate, was a Polaroid. I stared at it for a long time before I peeled it off. It was me, standing in the upstairs bathroom, brushing my teeth. I recognized the shirt, the chipped nail polish, even the stupid pineapple-patterned shower curtain in the background. It was from the night before, the exact moment I'd been brushing my teeth before bed. I remember because I'd heard a sound then, too. Just a little thump outside the window. I'd thought it was a squirrel. I looked up from the photo, toward that window. It faced the backyard. No blinds. And I always left it cracked for air because the fan in that bathroom hadn't worked in months. That crack was all someone would need. I called the police. They arrived fast, like they actually believed me. Maybe I sounded crazy enough to warrant urgency. I showed them the photo, walked them through the house, explained the knocking, the time, the way it was always 3 knocks. They checked every room, the backyard, the neighbor's yard. No signs of forced entry, no muddy footprints. Just a scratched fence panel near the bathroom window, but it looked old, weathered. They gave me a case number and a suggestion. Keep your windows shut, ma'am, and maybe get some cameras. I didn't sleep that night, just sat on the bed with every light on, phone charging, knife from the kitchen tucked under my thigh like a security blanket. I watched the clock tick minute by minute. I didn't blink. 11:17. I waited for the knock at the door, but it didn't come. Knock, knock, knock. 3 taps, inside. It was coming from my bedroom closet. I didn't breathe. Couldn't. I stared at the door like it might blink first. The knock came again. Softer now. Almost playful. Knock, knock, knock. I slid off the bed, moving like I was underwater. My hand closed around the knife. The floor creaked beneath my bare feet. The air smelled like old sweat and something coppery, like pennies soaked in milk. I touched the closet door and felt the wood vibrating. There was someone in there. I pulled the door open in one violent motion, ready to scream or stab or both. Nothing. No one inside. But there was something odd. The back panel of the closet, it wasn't flush with the wall. It looked peeled back, like something had burrowed behind it. I crouched and leaned in. The panel was loose, and behind it, there was space. A hollow cavity between walls. Too narrow for most adults, but someone could fit. Someone thin, determined, desperate. The next morning, forensics came. They pulled the panel off and found a makeshift nest of flattened pillows, a stack of half-eaten granola bars, a bottle of Gatorade, another Polaroid, this time of me sleeping. Face turned to the wall, arms tucked under the pillow, taken from inside the room. And worse, the inside wall of the closet was scratched raw. Human fingernails, ragged marks, like someone had been there for a long time, hiding, waiting. They never caught him, never found a name, a fingerprint, a motive, just a sick, voyeuristic obsession, and the unnerving truth that for at least 5 days I'd been living not alone, but with someone crawling through the walls, someone who knocked to say hello. It's been years now. Different apartment, different city, different locks. But sometimes if I'm brushing my teeth too late, or if the house settles a little too loudly, I'll hear it again. Knock, knock, knock. And I don't check the front door anymore, because I know better now. They say that loneliness is the quietest thing in the world. The absence of voices, of movement, of warmth, creates a kind of vacuum that pulls at the edges of your mind. It's a hollow feeling, an emptiness that follows you like a shadow in the dark. It's funny in a way that I didn't understand that fully until after my dog, Franklin, had surgery. At 22, I thought I knew everything about isolation. After my boyfriend moved out, I was used to the empty house. It wasn't the first time I had been alone. But that was different. I was used to it. I had adapted. But when Franklin tore his ACL, and I had to care for him, the helplessness, the responsibility, that was a kind of aloneness I hadn't experienced before. The worst part was the nights. I had to keep an eye on him. He wasn't a young dog anymore. He was 11, and recovering from surgery meant I had to make sure he didn't move too much. He could easily hurt himself even more. The vet recommended I keep him in the guest room overnight, in case he tried to get up and wander around. And because I'd heard about people using baby monitors for this kind of thing, I borrowed my sister's. She had 3 kids, so they had a whole bunch of extra stuff laying around. She handed me the high-def camera and said, "It'll be good for you both. You can keep an eye on him from your room." I was a little skeptical. It seemed like overkill for a dog, but hey, it gave me an excuse to feel connected, like I wasn't completely alone. I set the monitor on my bedside table and plugged it in, adjusting it to point toward the guest room. That first night was calm. Franklin was out like a light, lying on his favorite blanket. I could hear his breathing over the static of the monitor. It was comforting. But the second night, that was when everything changed. It was well past midnight, and I was half asleep when the blinking light on the monitor caught my attention. The image flickered slightly, like it was adjusting to the dark. I squinted at the screen. Franklin was still there, curled up in his usual spot on the floor. But then, movement. I thought at first that it was just him, shifting in his sleep. Maybe trying to stand, maybe moving toward the water bowl in the corner. But as I focused, I realized it wasn't Franklin. Not even close. It was something else. Something wrong. The figure was low to the ground, crawling backward, its body slithering like a snake. It wasn't a person standing on 2 legs. No, this thing moved like a spider, all knees and elbows twisted in unnatural directions, dragging itself across the floor in slow, deliberate movements. I sat up so fast the room spun. My heart dropped into my stomach. What was that? I glanced at the clock. 2:17 a.m. I could still see it, still hear the soft scrape of something dragging across the carpet. It was right there, in front of the camera, just barely in the frame, crawling toward the door of the guest room. A cold sweat broke out on my skin. Franklin didn't react. He stayed perfectly still. The monitor buzzed softly, the static growing a little louder, almost like it was amplifying the silence in the room. Then, just when I thought my chest was going to explode, the thing stopped. It froze for a second, and then with a slow, unnatural movement, it stood up. It was tall. Way too tall. I stared at the figure, my eyes glued to the monitor. It wasn't human. It couldn't be. The body was stretched, elongated in a way that shouldn't be possible. Its head brushed against the ceiling, its arms reaching down to the floor, long and thin like they'd been stretched by something unnatural. Then the thing turned toward the camera. It was looking at me. I don't know how I knew that, but I did. I felt it. That sickening sensation that someone, or something, was staring directly into my eyes. I didn't think. I ran. The door to the guest room flung open with a crash. I nearly tripped over the carpet as I sprinted across the hallway, my heart pounding in my ears. I thought I was going to pass out, but somehow I made it into the room. The lights were on now. I could see Franklin, still lying there, eyes half open, not a care in the world. The room was empty. I rushed to the baby monitor, nearly knocking it off the table. It was still blinking, recording. The static buzzed through the speakers, like the sound of 1,000 whispers. My body felt numb as I reached for the monitor's playback. The footage. I had to see it again. Maybe I had imagined it. Maybe I'd just been tired. Maybe it was a trick of the lighting. But no. What I saw still makes my stomach turn. The figure was there. The same one I'd seen crawling. Its face was just inches from the camera now, and what chilled me to the bone wasn't just the way it moved. It was the face. It was covered in thick black marker. The entire thing. A grotesque smiley face had been drawn over its features. Eyes, mouth, everything. Just thick, uneven black ink, smeared and dripping down its chin. I watched, transfixed, as it leaned in closer to the camera, breathing heavily. I could hear it, each ragged breath, each exhale like it was struggling to speak. And then it whispered, low and guttural, almost as though it was speaking directly into my ear. I know you're watching. I don't remember what happened after that. All I know is I called the cops. I had to. I was shaking so hard I could barely dial the phone. The officers arrived in less than an hour. They were kind, understanding even, but they didn't believe me. They didn't believe in what I had seen. They checked the entire house from top to bottom, the crawl space, the attic, the basement. They even searched the backyard. Nothing. They suggested maybe it was a prank, a man in a mask. But when I pointed out that Franklin hadn't barked once, hadn't reacted at all, they started to look a little less certain. I could see it in their eyes. They didn't say it, but they were scared too. The next day, I packed my things. I didn't care about the apartment anymore. I didn't care about the rent, the bills, or even the stuff I'd left behind. I left everything behind. I didn't even call the landlord. I just left. I thought maybe it was over. That whatever had happened, whatever that thing was, it was gone. But deep down, I knew. I knew it wasn't over. The last time I looked at the baby monitor, it was still recording. The screen was black, though. Nothing was showing. But when I touched the screen, it flickered, just for a second, and I could have sworn I saw a smile. Just a small one. And now? I don't know where it is. I don't know if it's still out there, watching. But I don't use baby monitors anymore. That's just the first chunk. The story is building up, but I'll keep expanding it until we hit the 5K mark, exploring her emotions, deepening the dread, and adding extra details that make the terror feel real and personal. Let me know if you want to tweak or add anything along the way, and I'll keep expanding from here. I was 12 the first time I really understood what it felt like to be watched. It happened one evening in the early fall, just as the sun started to dip behind the mountains, and the world outside turned a soft shade of purple. I was home alone. I was used to it by then. My parents, devout as they were, attended evening church services every Wednesday night, and they always left me with instructions to make sure the doors were locked, the lights were on, and most importantly, that I didn't answer the door to strangers. It was about 9:40 p.m. when I first saw him. I just settled into the couch, the television showing some stupid reality show I didn't really care about, when I noticed a shadow out of the corner of my eye. It was subtle at first, just a dark shape against the glow of the porch light, but then it lingered too long. I turned down the volume, sat up straight, and stared at the front door. I could see him through the glass, a man. He stood perfectly still on the porch, facing the door, staring at it like he was waiting for an invitation. He wasn't knocking. He wasn't doing anything, really, just waiting. It's like he knew I was inside, watching him, A feeling that's hard to describe crawled up my spine. You know that feeling when your skin tingles, your heartbeat quickens, and you just know something's wrong? Yeah, that's what I felt. I didn't move. My breath caught in my chest. Who was he? I grabbed my phone off the coffee table, trying not to make a sound, and dialed 911. The operator picked up after the first ring. 911, what's your emergency? I swallowed hard. There's a man. He's just standing on my porch. He's not knocking, he's just staring at the door. He hasn't moved. Is anyone else with you, ma'am? The operator asked, calm but professional. No, I whispered. Just me. Please send someone. Stay inside. Lock all doors and windows. Officers are on their way. Don't open the door for anyone. I hung up without saying anything else and set the phone down, clutching it tightly in my lap. I stayed where I was, my eyes never leaving the man outside. He didn't move, just stood there, unblinking, like he had all the time in the world. The next few minutes felt like hours. Every time I checked the time, it seemed to move slower. Finally, around 9:58 p.m., the flashing lights of a police car swept across the window. I rushed to the door, heart hammering in my chest, but when I opened it, no one was there. Not a single soul. The porch was empty. The police searched the area quickly, but they didn't find anything. No signs of forced entry, no footprints, nothing to suggest anyone had been there at all. It was like the man had vanished into thin air. They assured me it was probably a prank, or some confused person who meant no harm. But it didn't feel like that. Something about it felt wrong. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the shadows on the walls, my mind racing. Why had he been waiting? Why had he just stood there like that? I told myself it was nothing, that I was overthinking it, that it was probably nothing more than a man who had gotten confused or lost, looking for directions. The next evening, around the same time, I was watching TV again. Same time, 9:40 p.m. Same feeling of being watched. I paused the show, and sure enough, I saw him again. The man was back. Only this time, he didn't just stand there. This time, he knocked. 3 sharp raps on the door, one after another, slow, deliberate. The kind of knock that feels like it's meant to make you answer. I froze. My heart raced. I didn't know what to do. I ran to the door, but I didn't open it. I crouched down, trying to peer through the peephole, but I couldn't see him anymore. It was like he had disappeared. No knock. Nothing. I grabbed my phone, my hands trembling, and called my mom. Mom, he's back," I whispered, barely able to get the words out. He knocked. "Honey, don't open the door," she said, panic in her voice. "Stay inside. Lock the door. I'll call the police." But I didn't hear the police arrive. I didn't hear anything at all. The knocking had stopped. When they got there, they found nothing. Again. No signs of anyone being there, no footprints, no fingerprints, nothing. The officers didn't know what to say. They left quickly, telling me to stay inside, to be careful, to lock all the doors, and to call them again if I saw anything unusual. I stayed awake that night. My mind raced with questions. Why was he back? Why me? Why was he knocking? And why did it feel like he was just getting started? The third night I didn't call. I don't know why. I think I was tired of feeling helpless. I thought maybe if I just opened the door, maybe this time it wouldn't be so terrifying. Maybe he'd just leave. Maybe he just wanted to say something. At 9:45 p.m., I sat by the door. My heart pounded in my chest. The house was quiet, too quiet. No TV, no sounds from the street. Nothing except the soft ticking of the clock on the wall. Then came the knock. Knock, knock, knock. I stood up, took a deep breath, and walked to the door. I felt like I was moving through water, like everything around me was slow motion. I opened the door. There was no one. But there was something else. A folded piece of paper tucked into the crack of the doorframe. I pulled it out slowly, my hands shaking as I unfolded the note. It read, "Thank you. You look just like your mother did at your age." I stood there, my mind spinning. My breath was shallow. The ink on the paper blurred as tears welled in my eyes. I didn't understand. What was this? Who was this? I ran inside, slammed the door shut, and locked it. I stared at the note in my hand, confused and terrified. What did it mean? Why did it say that? And then, as the hours ticked by and the police came once more, and once more found nothing, I learned the truth. They told my mom the next day. The man was her ex-boyfriend, the one she had told me about once, years ago. The one who had died in a hiking accident 12 years ago, up in the mountains. His body had never been found. He was presumed dead, but he had been alive, and he had been living in the abandoned house 2 streets away, watching. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. Was he really dead? Was it him? Was he a ghost or something worse? And why had he come back after all this time? Why had he waited for me? I don't know. I don't have answers. I don't know if I'll ever get them. All I know is that when someone knocks on your door in the dark of night, you should never answer. And you should never, ever trust a man who stands waiting. Not for you. Not for anyone. I used to think hallucinations were just a brain glitch, a weird trick your mind plays on you when you're overtired or stressed. I'd seen them before. Those moments when your vision wavers, or your eyes deceive you into thinking you saw something out of the corner of your eye that wasn't really there. It was easy to brush off. But that was before he started showing up. Before the man in the mirror. I was 28 when it first happened. I had just moved into a small apartment in Dallas. The place was a little too big for one person, but it felt like an upgrade after years of living in cramped college dorms and renting from landlords who didn't care much for maintenance. This apartment was all mine, and it was supposed to be the start of something new, a fresh chapter. The world was mine. At first, things were normal. I spent my days at work, and my nights were spent watching TV or reading, alone. I didn't mind the solitude. But soon I started noticing something strange. I'd catch him out of the corner of my eye. A figure. Not in the room with me, not standing in front of me, but in the mirror, just behind me, standing still. At first I thought it was a trick of the light or the reflection from something outside. But the more I looked, the more I realized it wasn't the reflection of the room. It was a man, tall, thin, and pale. His features were indistinct, like someone you might have seen in passing but couldn't quite place. His eyes were dark, almost empty, but they were always staring directly at me. It was subtle at first. Maybe a movement in the corner of my eye, or a slight shift in the reflection. Nothing alarming, just strange. But the more I looked, the more I noticed. I'd look away, then look back, and he was closer. At first I tried to convince myself it was just stress. I'd been pulling long hours at work, handling deadlines and demanding clients. It was nothing, I told myself, just fatigue. I even joked about it to my friends. I must be going crazy seeing things in the mirror, I'd laugh. But inside I felt something dark creeping in. Something that wasn't just tiredness. He got closer. It started happening every day. I'd catch a glimpse of him in the hallway mirror, or the one over the bathroom sink. He'd be there waiting, never moving, just standing, staring at me. And then I started losing sleep. It wasn't just the occasional restless night, it was every night. I couldn't fall asleep. And when I did, I woke up in the middle of the night, heart pounding, with the overwhelming sense that someone was in the room with me. But there was never anyone there, except in the mirrors. That's when the reflection started getting off. It wasn't like before where he just stood behind me. Now when I'd move, my reflection didn't quite match my movements. I'd raise my hand to brush my hair out of my face, but the reflection was a moment behind, like a bad mirror glitch. The reflection would stay frozen for a second longer, then jerk to catch up with me. My reflection and I weren't in sync anymore. One night I couldn't take it anymore. I taped towels over every mirror in the house, the big one in the living room, the one over the bathroom sink, even the small one on the microwave. I covered them all, thinking that if I couldn't see him, he'd leave me alone. If I couldn't see the reflection, maybe it would stop. But that night I woke up to something else. I heard the sound of footsteps, soft, like the shuffle of bare feet on carpet. My heart stopped. I sat up in bed, barely breathing, straining to hear. The sound was close, but not in my room. It was coming from the hallway. My eyes darted to the towel-covered mirrors in the living room. The soft shuffling sound got louder. I hesitated, wondering if it was just my mind playing tricks on me. But then I heard it again. Someone was walking down the hallway. I slipped out of bed as quietly as I could, not bothering with the light. The shadows felt safer, but I couldn't ignore the cold, creeping terror that crawled up my spine. I stepped into the hallway, barely able to see through the darkness, my hands shaking as I reached for the light switch. And then I saw him. He was standing in the hallway, not in the mirror this time. No, he was standing there, real as anything, pale as death. The man with the empty eyes and the too thin face. His smile was wide, stretched unnaturally, like his lips were about to tear. His teeth were yellow and crooked, but he didn't speak. I froze, my body locked in place by a wave of pure terror. He didn't move. He didn't blink. He just stood there, grinning, with those hollow black eyes. And then, without breaking his gaze, he slowly pointed to the bathroom. I couldn't breathe. My chest was tight, and my head spun, but I couldn't stop looking at him, couldn't look away. My feet felt glued to the floor. I knew I had to go to the bathroom. I don't know why. It was like some invisible force was pulling me toward it. I walked slowly, each step heavy, each step more terrifying than the last. The man didn't move, but I could feel his eyes following me. I could feel his presence in every corner of the hallway. I reached the bathroom, my hands trembling, as I reached for the towel that was covering the mirror. The instant my fingers touched the fabric, I knew what I'd find, but I had to look. I pulled the towel off with a sharp tug, and that's when I saw it. On the bathroom mirror, written in black marker, was a message. The words seemed to crawl across the glass as if they had been written by something alive. You don't belong in your skin. I couldn't move. My legs gave out, and I collapsed to the floor. The message was etched into my mind, burning through my thoughts. The man behind me, his reflection. It wasn't just an image. It was a presence. He was real. The moment I read those words, I knew it was time to leave. I didn't think. I didn't pack. I just grabbed my phone, locked the door behind me, and ran out into the night. I haven't been back since. I left everything in that apartment, the furniture, the belongings. the life I'd started to build. I couldn't bring myself to stay. I don't know who or what that man was. I don't know what he wanted. But I know one thing for sure. When you start seeing something in the mirror that isn't supposed to be there, you're not just seeing things. You're seeing him. And he's not going to stop until he gets what he wants.